everyone, I'm John Coleman from Apocatastasis Institute for the Humanities, an alternative college and high school here on New Milford, Connecticut, USA. This recording is the latest installment of a series that Dylan Moore and Nima Majur and I have been doing on Carroll Quigley's Evolution of Civilization. We've come through things, and Dylan and Nima are going to recap better than I, but in a nutshell, what we're doing in this episode is taking Quigley's ideas and seeing how things are breaking out right now and in the foreseeable future. And Dylan and Nima are going to help us with that. Before I ask the two gentlemen about Arita TV and anything they want to announce, just two things concerning Apocatastasis Institute, as we are celebrating our 10th anniversary this month. One of which, very appropriate to this recording, is an invitation to check out our history courses at the Institute. We meet in person, and also we have online options. And these are regular college classes, so typically for 16 weeks, and with the incumbent reading and discussion and writing and so forth. So if you're in the market for that, so to speak, we accept students of about 15 years of age on up. The second announcement is that I have lately published a book, a memoir of sorts, on my time teaching, my first 12 years teaching, entitled An Excess of Love. And you can find out about that at Apocatastasis Press on our website in the ticker there. So with those two announcements seen to, before we get to our fascinating discussion with Carroll Quigley's book, Dylan and Nima, welcome, and please bring us up to date with Arita TV and anything else you guys would like to bring up.
Hey, John. Well, first off, thanks for having us on for a discussion on Carroll Quigley and evolution of civilizations, because it's one of our favorite topics. I know I'm speaking for Nima, but I think I'm speaking accurately. Nima can confirm or deny if that's one of his favorite topics. In terms of what's going on at Arita TV, it's the same thing as always. Awesome content coming out, talking about, well, Carroll Quigley and the evolution of civilizations, systematic politics, globalization, economics, intellectual self-defense, and cryptocurrency. If that's, some really basic, low-level conversations on some really easy talking points.
And we just added AI. We just added AI, and we also had a military discussion on a recent podcast, but that one's not published yet.
Excellent.
So
excellent.
And
what Absolutely. And what I really like about your episodes, too, is you step on some toes. You slaughter some sacred cows. For instance, is the Federal Reserve federal? And there are certain ideas, oftentimes uncited, that exist in certain communities. And what I really like about different things, whether economics or this, that, or the other, is that you really do delve very deeply, and you challenge even certain communities and different ideas. You challenge them, and I think that really will help a lot of freedom-loving people make a better argument when we clear up some of the detritus and things that we all fall into. So bravo, both of you, for that show and that whole series that you've been doing.
Well, we appreciate that. And that's actually, if you don't mind me jumping into kind of the theme of Irita TV, because that made me think of it, is one of the things, excuse me. Somebody tap dance. I need to take a drink of water. When we put together Irita TV, we didn't want to be just two more guys on the internet analyzing the news or just regurgitating a talking point, regardless of whatever angle it came from. For me, it was always, what is effective? And in order for us to be able to determine what is effective, we have to determine what is first, right? How do I effectively climb this mountain? Well, is the mountain Mount Everest? Is it Mount Pilchuck, which is, the one close to my house? Or is it a hole in the ground? Because that's not even a mountain, right? If we have this image of what we're supposed to be climbing that's different from what we're actually climbing, we're not going to be effective at climbing it. right? So part of efficacy is really understanding what is actually going on. And in order to understand what's actually going on, you brought it up, is we have to challenge what we actually think is going on, because it's so easy, because human beings are so tribal that, okay, I see that this tribe is, if we say we want freedom and we want liberty and we want peace and we want decentralization, all these sort of things, and I move toward the tribe that appears to be doing those things, it's very easy for us to say, okay, everything that tribe says is correct. And everything the other tribe says is incorrect. And that sort of thinking, it just doesn't, like, if we're gonna get access the higher parts of ourselves and interact with actual reality in order to do good in reality with the higher parts of ourselves, you can't get there with that base level tribal mentality. Now, I'm not saying there isn't something to tribalism, or that we should just entirely throw tribalism out the door, but to just assume something is correct because it comes from a certain tribe, of which the, in quotes, freedom community is completely guilty of, you're never going to be effective in reality. So when it comes to challenging these ideas, at least for me, I'll let Nima speak to his view of it. At least for me, it's all about what's effective. And before anything can actually be effective, we have to know what we're actually dealing with first.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. That's something I think about very often in my writing and so forth, is certain communities are so busy responding to what they see as problems, they never shut up long enough to actually appraise the systems that they're involved with. And right. I know with education, for instance, everyone hoots and hollers about public education, and no one ever actually defines what the word public is. And once you realize what that is, everything you see just falls into place. And that's a whole discussion, but I'm definitely on the same track there. Anything you want to say?
Nobody ever reads what the state law says public is, because that's the way that your system works.
Bingo. Yeah.
What I think we're dealing with enemies who are so sophisticated and who plan for the long term to such an extent that's unimaginable for most people. And they are not reacting, they are acting. They are always acting, and they predict reactions and have their counter reactions ready. And that's the level we have to counter them at. And so, yeah, like you said, a lot of communities just keep reacting and reacting to bad news and to oppression. And that's what they want. That's what they're hoping, because they're prepared for your reaction. And so we have to flip the script on that. So I totally agree that is where we can make a change.
Well, and Excellent. let's make a specific example out of it. I know we're getting kind of sidetracked, but at the same time, I don't think we are, because I think this is a good foundation to put for why are we talking about Carroll Quigley?
Yeah.
Why is this interesting? Because based on what I just said, I think that this is an effective way of analyzing what's going on so we can make effective change in reality right now. Talking about the public educational system, it's very easy if you come from the freedom side, particularly if you've been exposed to the ultimate history lesson or anything from John Taylor Gatto, is you understand that the American and therefore the Western public educational system comes from the Prussian educational system, which I don't want to sit here and rehash the whole thing. I'll just summarize it to say that the whole idea behind the Prussian educational system was to remove critical thinking, to give you skills to know how to do a certain task, but remove critical thinking so you can't question what's going on in order to turn you into a good worker or a good soldier. That's the premise of the public educational system. That obviously is at odds with the ethos of, I would say, Western civilization in general, but particularly like the American mindset of freedom and liberty and everybody should be able to critical think, so we can have this population that's really good at tackling problems and innovating and creating new ideas. Obviously, that's at odds. Right. And then if we get to the modern day, like, okay, the original purpose was to make good soldiers and workers. Well, it doesn't even do that anymore. Right?
Well said.
So there is, on the freedom side, particularly since COVID, where the kids had to go through these mask mandates, the kids had to they were beaten down, but we're looking at the specter of stabby mandates. And okay, we've got the CRT, we've got the DEI, the comprehensive sex ed, we've got the Common Core, like all this stuff's happening, and the parents are going, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my kids out of the school and homeschool them, or get them into private school, or we're going to sue the bonds of the teachers so they have to become responsible to us. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, and the sooner that we destroy the public educational system, we're going to get out of that Russian educational model and we can move forward into something better. Well, like Nima said, that reaction's already accounted for.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A quick interruption. I'm hearing an echo from you, Dylan. Are you hearing that too, John?
Slightly. I'll keep an ear out to the track for that.
Maybe if the people who are not talking, if they mute, maybe it's going to go away.
And I might, if I'm getting a feedback loop, I could stick some headphones on.
Okay. Yeah, let's keep an ear to the track. Thank you for that, Nima.
Am I echoing, or are you guys echoing, Nima?
Now that I muted, it's, and I think John, did you also mute? Because now
I did not mute, but I turned down my my speaker, and I know that helped the other day with another recording. So
okay.
Let me know if you hear that, gentlemen, going forward.
So if I told you, you being the listener, that Bill Gates, our favorite philanthropist, owns a company that is oriented toward teaching kids at home virtually, and that Bill Gates is looking forward to the destruction of the public school system, because this is the classic problem, reaction, solution. You create the chaos, you come in with the solution. They're trying to expedite the destruction of the public school system so they can bring in the new thing, which is they could attach to all the kids at home.
Mm-hmm.
So we're thinking, like Nima was saying, we're reacting. We're a step behind, going, oh, this public educational system, which sucked from the beginning. It was bad from the beginning because it's at odds with the ethos of our society. It has finally gotten so bad, we're going to kick its butt and get it out of here. You are feeding into the plan.
Mm-hmm.
You're feeding into the plan. So we need to think in longer terms to say, yes, the public educational system sucks, but we've got to work with it because that's the system that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's thinking in a more complicated way than we're used to, and thinking as we move toward now, thinking about how not to fall into traps that are being dug for us. Because I can tell you with different accents, exactly what Dylan said. There's a setup coming. There is absolutely a setup coming with homeschool and online ed, and hopefully these meta discussions will help us provide against being bamboozled.
Absolutely. So let's jump into Quigley. Let's jump into evolution of civilizations. So I'm going to try to do a light speed recap of the previous 3 shows that we did. And the core tenet of what we're talking about here, Quigley hypothesizes in this book, The Evolution of Civilizations, which is essentially a scientific method for looking at history. And it's not as clean as like an F equals MA formula, right? Quigley does point out, and Quigley does come from a hard sciences background. He was a biochemistry major before he switched over to history, is to say that in the hard sciences, because there are no free will actors, we can come up with formulas like F equals MA and test them. What happens when we get into the social sciences is because when we introduce free will actors, suddenly the question becomes, is it even possible to have something like that, or even worth discussing it at all? Do we just throw the entire idea out the window? And Quigley's point is, he says, it is harder because there are free will actors, but we cannot throw it completely outside the window. And he comes up with this as the core idea of what he's talking about, is that societies create organizations in order to achieve a goal within society, right? A society creates an army to protect the nation. A society creates a financial system to improve the economics of the society. A society creates media in order to help inform everybody within the society, so on and so on and so on. The idea is that any instrument, he calls this an instrument, an organization that's created to achieve a goal and achieves that goal, is an instrument of society. That instrument, through reasons that that we broke down in the first call, I'm not going to break it down here, eventually become institutionalized, where the organization develops a vested interest that's more interested in feeding itself and maintaining the status quo of the society that allows it to feed itself than it is in achieving the goal of whatever the goal of that organization was supposed to be, where that goal either becomes secondary, in which case more and more resources need to be shoveled into the organization to achieve the same goal that it achieved before, or that goal even becomes contradictory to the organization. And the example that we've brought up the multiple times now is the news media, right? If we're in a perfect utopian world and we go, okay, what is the purpose of the news media? We might come up with an answer that's something akin to, well, the news media is there to inform the citizenry of what's going on in the society. Well, what do we have now? We have a media that actively prevents the the citizenry from knowing what's going on into the society in order to, I don't know, further WEF goals, or get money from the pharmaceutical industry or something like that, right? Or to support the Democratic Party platform or whatever. Is
brought to you by Pfizer?
Yeah, you were more specific than I was. And then, I mean, the fact that we even talked about the public educational system, I think, is an excellent point, that even the social organization of the public educational system as it came from Prussia through initially Massachusetts and the United States in the 1850s, from Horace Mann, who was the first American to ever receive a Prussian PhD and became the governor of Massachusetts, is that even if we look at it and say, okay, that thing was bad because its initial goals were remove critical thinking to create good soldiers and good workers. Oh, yeah. Life of Horace Mann. There it is right there. Even that has become institutionalized because the organization doesn't even do that anymore. So Quigley's point is that every human organization has a natural tendency to do this. Again, we went over why in the first show. This is the scientific component of analyzing history, is this thing right here, is every societal organization will naturally go from an instrument to an institution. Now, Quigley points out that this is not deterministic. The reason that this happens is because there's nobody within the organization going, wait a minute, what's the purpose of this organization anyway? And are we moving toward that purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, maybe there's an organization here or there that does that, but in general, nobody has the job in order to make that, in order to ensure that happens. Now, this gets very interesting on a civilizational level, because there is a key organization. There is a key instrument that defines what a civilization is, according to Quigley, and that's called the instrument of expansion. The instrument of expansion is when a society develops a societal instrument that creates economic surplus, saves economic surplus, and reinvests that economic surplus into new invention, which creates even more economic surplus. When a society, usually through accident, develops that organizational system like that, it starts to expand, and we call that expansion. Basically, we can label it and say, hey, there's a civilization that has developed an instrument of expansion. The entire life cycle of civilizations, which we described 7 stages of civilizations, is dependent on what is going on with that instrument of expansion, and whether that instrument is still an instrument achieving its goal, or if it's institutionalized and it's just eating resources and not giving back what the expansion was supposed to be. Now, the 7 stages we talked about were mixture, gestation, expansion, conflict, universal empire, decay, and invasion. And essentially, if I could put it in like the most boring normie terms I could possibly think of, is an instrument of expansion is functioning within a civilization if a person can grow up and get rewarded by participating in society. I think the thing that we're most familiar with now, and we're actually going to be talking about this because this is kind of the current state of the situation, is when we look at the boomer generation, the baby boomer generation versus the Gen Z generation. We look at the baby boomer generation. If they participated in what society told them to participate in, you go to school, you get good grades, maybe you go to college, you graduate, you get a job, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, you are rewarded for participating in that. Fast forward to now, you're actively punished for doing that. You can become a permanent debt slave for participating in that story, and graduate with not just degrees that do nothing, but with like mind viruses that prevent you from being productive. Right? I'm a pink-haired Marxist now, and I think getting a job is, capitalist oppression. And I'm $100,000 in debt for to get that education, which proves my point. Right?
Yeah, well said. Yes.
Now, that was the second conversation that we had going over those 7 stages. The third conversation we had is that Western civilization in particular is unique in that it did not follow those 7 stages. When Western civilization went through stage 1, mixture, stage 2, gestation, this is like after the fall of the Roman Empire, it reaches an age of expansion. This is like the medieval era. And then it reaches an age of conflict, which is near the end of the medieval era. What we should have seen was a universal empire taking it over. And at that time, England was kind of playing that role of the universal empire. That ultimately was circumvented by the creation of a new instrument of expansion, which created much, much more surplus than the original one did, to the point where society had a new growth in another area of the civilization, which made whatever the attempted universal empire that was trying to conquer the whole thing, England at this point, obsolete. The one way I said it in the previous episodes was, hey, you guys just won the War of Swords. Good job. We just invented muskets. Have fun. Now, not only has Western civilization done that, it has done that, 3 times? Nima,
yes.
I got that right? We've done that 3 times, where after the medieval period, we entered the what was it, the pre-modern period? Is that what it's called? Kind of like 1400s, 1500s?
Yeah, that's right. Pre-modern.
Yeah, we entered the pre-modern period where basically we go from Mediterranean trade to Atlantic trade. That's kind of the most basic way to put it. We go from Mediterranean trade to Atlantic trade. Napoleon and France attempt to conquer the world of the Atlantic trade. And then Britain and, as an offshoot, America start developing the Industrial Revolution, where they could say, okay, Napoleon, you won the War of Muskets. We just invented machine guns. Have fun. I'm totally oversimplifying this, but it's kind of sort of like that, right?
Got it.
Then we go through a new age of expansion, starting at 1820 or thereabouts, right? We enter a new age of expansion, which starts to crystallize and become institutionalized, where we see Germany attempt to do a universal empire. Germany's defeated, and Carroll Quigley writes these books about 20 years after Germany's defeated, going, this is too recent for me to say whether or not we've entered a new age of expansion.
And those books would be Anglo-American Empire, Tragedy and Hope, you say, or those are others?
I actually haven't read Anglo-American Establishment. I'm saying you're going to see that in Evolution of Civilizations,
Got it.
the broader concepts, and then in Tragedy and Hope, he really gets into the nitty-gritty of that story.
Yep.
Yeah, I almost think the Anglo-American Establishment is like a sort of shorter version of Tragedy and Hope that focuses on particular aspects, or maybe with some more focus on certain special interest groups.
Yeah.
So that brings us to not today, where we're kind of, the boomers are growing up point, but that's where Quigley leaves us off. We don't have Quigley to write these incredible books telling us what's going on anymore, right? And the question became,
if I could, just about this point, at the end of Tragedy and Hope, I recall, I've read that twice now, and one of the things I was struck with in both instances is that Quigley is dismayed that what we would call in America the greatest generation failed, even at the time Quigley's writing, failed to transmit its values to the boomers. So he was in palpitating that there was going to be a shift of a sort. I just wanted to bring that up. Maybe we can return to it. The failure of the World War II generation to instill their values.
I completely forgot I had read that at the end of the book. I think that's a very, very important point. Yes, I do want to come back to that. So let's try to pick up the pieces after World War II. And I mean, we basically answered this question in the last show, but I think we could take some more time looking at the question is, did we enter a fourth age of expansion after World War II? And I think after, Nima and I have gone back and forth on this 100 times, but every which way we look at it, we can only come up with the answer of yes. That Western civilization absolutely entered a new age of expansion after World War II. And go ahead, Nima.
Yeah, by all the objective factors criteria that Quigley lists, right? He says expansion in trade, expansion in the production of goods, expansion in the population size, expansion in the territory, expansion in knowledge.
And science. Yeah.
Science. So yeah, every which way you look at it, I think the expansion of, the cost of shipping has come down to a rounding error, basically. These are just huge factors that
and then the improvement of quality of life for everybody. The boomers were the richest generation on the face of the planet.
Yes. And then also the third world countries that have been lifted out of poverty, India, China. And then, we can look at the tiger states, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, all over the world. A lot of people have grown out of the underclass into the middle class. So yeah, by all objective measures, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that a fourth age of expansion started around 1945.
Yeah, here it is. Stage of expansion, just reiterating what Nima said right straight out of the book.
Thank you.
Is marked by four kinds of expansion. Increased production of goods, eventually reflected in rising standards of living, increased population of the society, an increase of the geographic extent. Well, in this case, kind of the whole world has been explored by 1945. So maybe not so much in that one. And an increase in knowledge. So if we then take the idea to say, okay, was there an age of conflict after that? Well, an age of conflict is when the instrument of expansion starts to become institutionalized and the vested interests deal with it by starting foreign wars, because this accomplishes two things. One, they can get the resources they need to continue fueling the society, because the resources that have gone toward the instrument of expansion are just getting eaten up by the vested interests more and more. And second, they can do something with the rising, how do I want to say it, frustrated masses that aren't getting what they should have been getting from participating in society. So A, you can give them a job, and B, you can kill off some of them. Now, in modern history, I think if we go forward to the Vietnam War, I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just saying you could make the argument that the Vietnam War was not an imperialist war by Western civilization. It had something more to do with, okay, here's communism and all these countries are being taken over by red, and this is a fight for freedom for the entirety of the world, and this is really important that we take a stand here to stop the communist dominoes from falling. Again, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying you can make that argument. Right? If we fast forward to Iraq 2 after 9/11, there are weapons of mass destruction, and we know, and this is a straight lie to your face, and we just want to invade this place because of geopolitical and resource reasons. It's totally an imperialist war. Come on, right? And then 9/11 in and of itself, Nima has pointed this out. I think you could really, if you wanted to draw a line and say, when does the age of conflict start in Western civilization? Yeah, I'd say 9/11 is really the demarcation of like, okay, we need a hyper surveillance society. All civil rights and all human rights need to get thrown out the window with FISA courts. And we got to spy on everybody. We got to collect on everybody's data, and everybody's a terrorist.
If you see something, say something.
Yeah. And we're like the last generation that even remembers what it was like before then. Yeah. So, and then as we go into the age of conflict, we continue this age of conflict. There's a level of frustration, and I want to pull this up again because this is it's so acute what Quigley says about what we see during ages of conflict. And it might take me a second to find the page. So Nima or John, if you had any commentary on that, now's the time to.
Yeah, well, we certainly see that conflict with the whole war and terror nonsense, and then spinning off into the adventures in Ukraine and all this NATO jazz we saw with the Arab Spring in Libya and all the way through Syria, and this whole high tide that we've enjoyed from the neoconservatives all these years. So there we go.
Yeah, the arrogance of this globalist regime, this basically global financial capitalism conglomerate, has really come to bear fully, I think, beginning with 9/11. And the whole atmosphere turned really dark with 9/11. A lot of things just changed. You can just feel how things changed a lot in this country during and post 9/11. And I wrote down a couple of notes about this phase. It started in 2001, which sort of exemplifies symptoms of institutionalization that you usually see during the conflict phase. So we have global technocrats attempt to control everything by restricting competition in business, in media, in politics, in religion, in science, and even in social life. They started clamping down on us. If you recall, lockdowns, social distancing, genocidal stabbies, pushes. And the elite ideology has become officially and proudly open Malthusianism, whereas previously Malthusianism was considered an evil ideology by liberals. It's now a good ideology to reduce, if Bill Gates, well, we got to get the numbers down, in a TED talk in front of a clapping, excited crowd and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, publicly, with no blinking. Yes.
Yeah, no, just people like giggling and cheering. So the whole system has petrified into this kind of oligopoly or monopoly in some cases. And a symptom of the conflict phase is also that this instrument of the members of the instrument of expansion, as they petrify and institutionalize, they try to reduce the supply of everything. They try to reduce all the things that proliferated during the growth phase: access to knowledge, access to production of goods and services. We can't build anything anywhere anymore. There's a turtle that's protected. There's a Delta smelt in California needs to be protected. This tiny fish that nobody cares about. So there's excuses everywhere for why we can't do things anymore. That didn't used to be the case. It was the opposite, right? We tried to find every excuse to do everything possible. We built giant dams, absolutely insane projects that we attempted that we're not really doing on that level anymore, at least not on the level where it serves the people. But now it's more they're working on secretive, clandestine technology to dominate the public. So they've attempted to monopolize data access during this phase. These giant mega corporations that are trying to be in charge of collecting, disseminating data. That's why I think the institutionalization phase of the globalist capitalist system could be called data monopoly capitalism or something like that. And the control has been very planned. It hasn't been automatic as in previous phases. And in Quigley's timeline, things always go from automatic to conscious, back and forth. Feudalism,
or centralized, decentralized, I think would be another
centralized, decentralized. Feudalism was decentralized. Commercial capitalism was centralized. Industrial capitalism was decentralized. Monopoly capitalism and globalist capitalism was centralized. Now we're in the conflict phase where this global capitalist system is really hyper centralizing in the hands of very few, like Fortune, I would say Fortune 10 companies. Maybe.
Google, Amazon, Microsoft. There you go.
Yeah, and the political expression of all of this ultimately would be a global government, and that's what I think. It's not controversial anymore to suggest that is the path that they're trying to take us down to, a kind of system with a global committee of very few, very powerful mega corporations controlling the most important levers and hubs of society. All symptoms of conflict, all symptoms of institutionalization, of hyper-monopolization among the organizations that are in charge of expansion, that constitute the instrument of expansion, as Dylan said. And so those in part, right? Savings, which is banking, and the monetary system; invention, which is academia; and investment, which is also at the moment the banking and the investment financial system in general.
On the idea of the age of conflict, I'm struck with another book, much more recent, and that's from, I think, 1999, called The Fourth Turning. And that looked at American history and these cycles. And that whole idea of the cycle of conflict is exactly, according to that book, it fits very much with what we're seeing since 9/11 as well. So it's just interesting that, from another historian or two historians who wrote that book, The Fourth Turning, in the 90s, that they're jiving with what some of these cycles that Quigley was getting into with, as we see it, the age of conflict right now. And I think that corroboration helps to give credence to these ideas.
Yeah, I think the fourth turning is the stage where weak men make bad times, or is that what that is?
That's about it there. Yeah, that's in a nutshell, I suppose. And he looks at, or those guys, they look at, I think it was like the 1760s, the French and Indian War and the Revolution, and then the 1860s, and then the 1940s, and they had this whole theory, so that by the time you get to right now, here we are back in the time for another major war, just like the Revolution, World Wars. Here we are again.
Well, leading up into this conversation we're about to get into, because now it's talking about, we're basically sitting on the fourth age of conflict, and the question becomes, can we enter a fifth age of expansion? I want to read a little bit from the book here, really defining what we see in an age of conflict. So the age of conflict is marked by four chief characteristics. It is a period of the declining rate of expansion. It is a period of growing tension of evolution and increasing class conflicts, especially in the core area. It is a period of increasingly frequent and violent imperialistic wars. And it's a period of growing irrationality, pessimism, superstitions, and otherworldliness. Now, we talked about the imperialist wars. We kind of jumped on the increasing class conflicts with these mega corporations versus everybody else. But what I really wanted to point out was this last one, which was the growing irrationality, pessimism, superstitions, and otherworldliness. And some of the examples that he gives for this are where to go. This is generally a period of gambling, use of narcotics or intoxicants, obsession with sex, frequently as perversion, increasing crime, growing numbers of neurotics and psychotics, and growing obsession with the death and the hereafter. This, I mean, like, you want a more explicit definition of what's going on right now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, increasing use of narcotics. Okay, we're having the fentanyl zombie apocalypse right now everywhere, right? Well, on the hard end and on the soft end, everybody needs to smoke weed all the time now, for example. I mean, not that they weren't doing it before, but I mean, now it's kind of like this.
Well, now the commercial structure, though.
Yeah.
Do you see it in the same way with the obsession with death and the hereafter? I would say that would be an exception. People don't.
The rapture or the New Age movement, okay, right? 2012's coming. We're all going to be saved by the Pleiadians.
Okay.
Or the rapture.
April 8th is coming
back, and it's going to rapture us off. So we don't have to.
Well, I think there's definitely a trend of where this world, like in the spiritual realm, the most popular belief systems today are the ones that deny the relevance of the physical realm in the here and now, and put all their hopes in some kind of ethereal realm, the afterlife, and to me at least, true. Let's say Christianity, because that's what
We're having the echo again, John.
What was that?
Okay.
The echo's happened again.
Yeah, I hear the echo also. Yeah, I've been hearing it. Generally, this world is part of the revelation from God, and what you do in this world matters, right? And so today's spiritual movements are not really in line with that, in my opinion. So yeah, I would say there is more otherworldliness in today's spiritual trends than there was in the past.
Nima, thank you for that clarification.
I was muted, and I think John was muted. Maybe pull your microphone a little further away from your speakers. If you can do that.
I see.
Well, I'm muted, so even when I mute, I hear you echoing. So I don't know if that's gonna help, but okay.
Okay, we'll continue to troubleshoot as we keep talking. Hopefully, listeners, you're not unable to listen to it due to the echo.
This is why everyone wants to donate to Arita TV and Apocatastasis so we can afford a production crew. But in the meantime, they'll have to deal with our troubleshooting.
I'll stick my headphones on too. Here, just a second.
So will I. Okay, we'll see how this works here. Thinking on our toes here.
We're doing it live.
There you go. There you go.
Well, not hearing an echo so far.
Okay. So we go from here, Dylan, with having laid all this out and these and got that great definition.
Yeah, if you don't mind a second, my eardrums are getting blasted out by this, and I just might have to deal with it because. Oh no, I know you.
Oh, the hearing aid fund too for the viewers that can contribute to the hearing aid fund.
No, I just had to find the right dial to turn. Okay, you guys can hear me fine still?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think why it's important to point this out, the specific points of what we see during an age of conflict, is that this is really what we're seeing now. And because Quigley's describing this as the age of conflict, and we could turn around and see it, it's very easy to become hopeless. It's very easy to become black-pilled. Because, like, oh my God, there it is. And furthermore, God, did I just lose the page? No, I didn't. Here it is. This is where it gets really wild. And we mentioned this in the last show, I think. Accordingly, the vested interests encourage the growth of imperialist wars and irrationality because both serve to divert the discontent of the masses away from the vested interests, which is essentially the uninvested surplus of the civilization. Some of the defenders of the vested interests divert a certain part of their surplus to create instruments of class oppression, instruments of imperialist wars, and instruments of irrationality. I mean, I brought this up last time. Would the ADL or the Southern Poverty Law Center be examples of instruments of class oppression? Would the news media be an instrument of irrationality? Sorry, Nima, go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly it, basically. These kinds of instruments emerge in the face of conflict in Quigley's theory, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the media being used as an instrument of irrationality, and we're seeing the ADL and political correctness used as absolutely tyrannical jackboots on the necks of just common people who are
schools
having conversations. Schools also, yeah. I always think of, imagine Facebook was a party where people have a conversation, and then you have some dude running around the party and jumping into conversations, telling people, "No, you can't talk about that, dude." That's That's what these people are to me.
I'm removing your ability to talk for the next 30 minutes. Yeah.
You're on timeout. Go in the corner with the dunce hat. Exactly.
Now,
I think they use that. They even use that word. Talk about juvenilization. I mean, don't they use like Facebook timeout? They use some very immature language.
I'm not even on Facebook anymore. I don't know.
I've been on Facebook timeout many times. They call it Facebook jail, actually. I mean, we call it Facebook jail. Most fun of it. You know, when someone gets out, it's like, "Hey, homie, welcome back to society."
Well, and then when I was still using Facebook, I remember me and Nima sending private messages back and forth.
Yes.
Got me in Facebook jail.
No, we had a secret group. At one point, I was part of a secret group where, you know, a bunch of guys just talking. You were on it too at one point, Dylan, just talking about stuff that we don't want to talk about publicly. And then suddenly it's like, no, you can't talk about that. Oh, it's not so secret anymore, I guess. If Mark Zuckerberg sticks his nose in there.
Now, here's the hope. What we're describing is scary. It's a tragedy, but here's the hope.
Yeah.
So once these instruments are created and begin to become institutions of class oppression, of institutions of imperialist wars, and institutions of irrationality, the chances of the institution of expansion being reformed into a new instrument of expansion become almost nil. I do not believe we are there yet. We have not reached the point where these instruments of class oppression and irrationality and whatever the third one was, imperialist wars, have become institutionalized. And I mean, the example that he gives was from ancient Sumeria, which was to say that the original instrument of expansion was the Sumerian priesthood. These get completely eclipsed by the Sumerian kings at some point, where the priesthood is secondary. We are not at that point. And circumvention is the key word here, because we didn't, in my summary, I forgot to bring this up, is that any instrument, when it becomes institutionalized, there's three things that can happen to it. Because at some point, the people are going to get upset about the fact that the resources that they're committing to the organization are not providing the benefits that they were providing before. You can attempt to reform it, or you can attempt to circumvent it. In either case, if you fail, we call that reaction, where the vested interest went over. Reform is you try to get into the organization and change the organization to either go back to its original goal or to redefine what the goal should be. Circumvention is to say, yeah, just leave it alone. We're going to go invent something new. And that something new is going to be what it's going to become so powerful, essentially, that the old thing just doesn't matter anymore. Quigley points out that circumvention is always easier than reform. And in the example of Western civilization, each succeeding phase was accomplished by a circumvention of the instrument of expansion, not reform. All right. So I think what we're looking at, that we're in this phase where we're in the first half of the age of conflict, where we're seeing the instruments of class oppression and irrationality and imperialist wars. We have not entered the phase of institutions. So there's still time. And the question becomes, and I think this is where the conversation gets very exciting, is there the possibility of circumvention to create a new instrument of expansion to put Western civilization into a new age of expansion? And me and Nima say absolutely 100% yes.
And I just want to point out, these ages of conflict have not necessarily been very long. If we go, the first conflict was from 1270 through 1440. That was 70 years. Second conflict from 1690 through 1850. I guess that one was a little longer, more like, over 100 years. The third conflict was from 1893 through 1945. That's 52 years. And now this conflict phase started in 2001. Everything's faster these days. Everything's accelerated. We're like achieving things in 2 years that would have taken 20 years. And we're like 23 years into this conflict. So it's possible that this conflict phase is over around 2035, maybe even 2030. So I would say we're not even that far from entering a new age of expansion. By Quigley's
say two things.
Theory.
Yeah. You can even say three if you want.
Just briefly, one is that the creeps or the archons or the powers that be, however we label them, they seem to be operating under this consciousness as well. Some of them are quite obsessed with, for instance, 2030 and their behavior, trying to almost kick through certain agendas seems to manifest this, that they too are aware that their season is short. Also, by way of circumventing the system, I want to point out to the audience, look at Areta TV or Apocatastasis. Areta TV is, stultified media, and you have things like the gentleman's work offering, an alternative, as opposed to trying to go into a network news or something and try to get those ideas through. You just sidestep it and build your own. And with Apocatastasis, the same with academia. Go on, Dylan.
Yeah, no, I wanted to look at a few examples. For example, news. We'll broadly categorize this as news, right? Or somewhere between news and education, right?
Right.
So if we look at social media, we look at the internet, we look at social media, this became, prior to 2016, essentially, this like amazing method of communication where all this information, I mean, there was a lot of noise and there was a lot of attempt to control it, but the good information started to be being able to be communicated. Right now, as the social media empires grew bigger and bigger and bigger, we had Facebook, Twitter, and I'm going to call YouTube under the broad scope of social media, right? So we had YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter as kind of the big three of the way people were communicating. We saw this massive crackdown, basically 2020 to 2022, of really pulling this back. While simultaneously, we had the news out there looking to destroy anybody. That's a racist. That's an anti-Semite. That's a white supremacist. That's a terrorist. That's try to destroy everybody. And then at the same time, we got the financial system going. Okay, anybody who gets that label, we kick them out of the financial system. So the person could be silenced. The person could even be arrested. We've got the FISA. We don't need a warrant. We don't need evidence sort of thing to get at people now. People could be arrested. We've got, for example, the J6 people that are rotting in a cell forever with no charges. That's not quite a speedy trial, right? We got the financial system where this whole thing was built to be able to point at someone and go, destroy him, destroy him, destroy him. Well, what have we seen? Well, first of all, with the financial system, with the advent of cryptocurrency right now, and I think cryptocurrency is going to continue to grow, but right now, the biggest use I see out of cryptocurrency is it allows people who have been canceled out of the institutionalized financial system to still operate financially. I mean, this is what Gab was. Gab is multiples of these points in one, where here's Gab trying to be an alternative to say we will allow free speech here as a circumvention of the Facebooks and the YouTubes and stuff, the Twitters. So you can still talk here. And the powers that be said, okay, but he can't have a credit card. He can't have a bank account. He can't, no financial services whatsoever. He literally got the thing to run. Andrew Torba, they literally got the thing to run on cryptocurrency. What a perfect example of circumvention on multiple fronts.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's quite remarkable.
Cryptocurrency itself is an example for this because somebody tried to set up e-gold in the pre-2000s. It was shut down by the state. I think it was in Amsterdam or wherever. I suspect that Satoshi was probably one of those. The founder of Bitcoin, the pseudo-anonymous founder of Bitcoin, was probably someone who tried to set up a system like that. Identified the challenges and solved those challenges with a peer-to-peer system. And with a peer-to-peer system that uses proof of work that can be done by anyone. So this started in 2009. So I would argue that the groundwork for the next phase of expansion, which maybe, let's say it starts in 2030, 35 or wherever, it's being laid, and it started being laid in 2009 with the invention of cryptocurrency.
And then, let's talk about all the other decentralization technology. Think about 3D printing, right? Think about the way social media is working right now. Think about the whole concept of BitChute, which BitChute doesn't seem to be operating very well lately, but the concept's a good idea.
Odyssey is a better example.
Odyssey is a much better example of this idea of, okay, if everything is decentralized, the whole way that we have the system set up is decentralized, there's nobody to shut down. There's nobody to arrest. There's nobody to define. There's nobody to cancel because it's all spread out. And then if we add the Web3, sorry, Dima, if you were going to go there, if we add the fact that the new system that's being developed is permanently making everybody anonymous, what makes it that much harder to snipe off the guys that you don't like?
Yeah, what's happening right now is so the old model is basically I sit here with my computer, that's all I have, and there's Google. Google has my password, my username, my bank account information, my credit card, my address, I went to this place, I went to that place, I did this, like literally everything sits in this stupid one
the data
blob
capitalism
of data.
Data capitalism. Yep.
Yeah, that's what data monopoly capitalism to me. And what is happening now with the advent of cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer technology is that this blob is being broken up into different layers. The security layer is coming back onto my computer. I have the private key to everything I own, and nobody else has my private key or even a hash of it or anything. No, only I have the private key. I can use a public key, which is derived out of the private key to identify myself. And I don't have to trust anybody with my private key. I can always keep it on my computer. The financial layer is sitting on a blockchain now, but it's encrypted, and only with my private key can I get access to my money on the blockchain. My personal data, if you look at new Web3 businesses, my personal data doesn't need to be on anyone's server. It's not anyone's. It can stay on my end as well, or on a decentralized, encrypted data provider that I trust. But it doesn't need to sit with the application layer. That's the only thing that the service provider should be in charge of, like a Google, like a Microsoft. They built the application layer. And by the way, in the new world, in the expansion number 5 phase, this application layer will most likely be open source. So anyone can investigate it at any time. This is not the profit generator anymore. The profit generator is the cryptocurrency that's being used to pay for this or that application layer service. So I just wanted to illustrate that is really this old model of this giant conglomerate owns my data is already over. It's going to take a while for it to be phased out, but as time progresses, the younger millennials, the Gen Zers, they will laugh at that kind of tech. They will look at it as boomer tech, and you won't be able to compete in the market if you're asking for a username and a password on a login page anymore. It's not good, because if you go to websites like Magic Eden, where you can trade digital assets, you connect with your Web3 wallet, you sign a message on your Web3 wallet, which proves that you have the private key without revealing it. And that's the end of the story. You're logged in. You're not providing your password. You don't have a username on their network. They don't have to. It also makes the application layer business much easier. You don't have to be in charge of my password, my username. You don't need any of that stuff. All you need from me is to verify that I own the private key that holds, that has access to data X, Y, and Z. And even the trading is becoming decentralized. If I trade digital assets of MagicEden.io, Magic Eden is just an intermediary. I trade with a person selling an NFT or a token, or vice versa. This is so inevitable, and it's already happening, that I think that this is really the future. This is what I would call if you want to pull up our PDF from last time.
Yeah, can you share it?
I sure shall, yes.
The very last square, that's what Dylan and I are speculating is a phase that we're moving into, that we're currently seeing where the groundwork's being laid. And I think that's really exciting that we get to be part of this so early on. But in the digital decentralized capitalism, you profit through the exchange and facilitation of digital decentralized assets. That could be cryptocurrencies, that can be tokens, that can be traded kind of like stocks. You can buy stocks in a mining company now that are issued on the blockchain. Amazing. They don't need to go through the SEC. They don't need to go through the FinCEN. They don't need to go through this FBI investigation and that, because there's nobody to investigate. There's nobody really who has to reveal their identity to run this stuff. All that's needed is that you provide value, and people will be interested in investing in your business.
The code is open source, so people can investigate what's going on.
So the another important thing that's changed with cryptocurrency is that the transmission of value has been decoupled from identity. It used to be where transmission of value, you make a credit card payment, it always had to be linked to your identity, because if somebody does a chargeback on a credit card, you need to have some kind of way to pursue them. If they kind of, if they defraud you that way, you need to have recourse. Nowadays, with cryptocurrency, all you need is a crypto payment and wait for confirmation, 2 confirmations, wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and the payment is done. It's irreversible. You don't need somebody's identity when they make a payment anymore. This is these factors, the decoupling of identity from value, the breaking apart of the data conglomeration, this is so huge and it's so irresistible that this will power the next expansion, in my opinion.
And if I could interject just with a point that Quigley made to your excellent points yourselves, Dylan and Nima, I'm reminded of the statement, speaking of cycles of history and so forth, concerning the Bourbons in France when they came back after Napoleon. And the statement is they learned nothing and they forgot nothing in their exile. They learned nothing and they forgot nothing. And applying that to our situation now, it's fascinating. You have this whole boomer model, not to pick on that generation, but you have this whole model that's completely outdated, and it's doing exactly what Quigley said. And he had noted happened in the medieval period. So this model is completely outdated. Its sun is setting, and they're doing exactly what every other ruling class has done. They've learned nothing and they've forgotten nothing, and so they just keep trying to prop it up and trying to smush out the opposition with deplatforming and all of this jazz with the banks we saw with January 6th and Canada around that time. And it's the same stuff Quigley points out with the guilds and stuff in the medieval period and the knights and how that was completely archaic by the 1500s, and yet they kept trying to lock out the obviously evident church system that was coming out. It's the exact same phenomena we're seeing now when you have the banks and Janet Yellen and all these creeps and everything trying to smush and co-opt cryptocurrency, for instance.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. That's exactly, I like that parallel. And a few more symptoms that I listed here, right? We have peer-to-peer dominates these days. We have all kinds of peer-to-peer. We also have Filecoin, for example, which is decentralized data storage. We have a return of homesteading. I think it's become popular culturally, and it's a cool thing to do again. I also pointed out here that nationalism has become more popular, not because I think that nationalism is the system of the future or anything like that. I'm totally neutral to that. But I think nationalism represents the desire of the people to take power back to where the people are actually.
It's a decentralization direction, not a centralization direction. Yes,
from where we are, exactly. And then also, like you said earlier, Dylan, 3D printing. Hasn't taken off the way I thought it would. Like I think 10 years ago, I would have thought that we'd be 3D printing everything by now, but I think it's also inevitable. I think 3D printing is so irresistible and so powerful that depending on the state of technology, and as far as I know, even like 10 years ago, I got a silly little test 3D printer back then, but I had already seen some amazing stuff that was being done. Like, for example, in Japan, they've been built 3D printing homes for a while already, for at least a decade, if not more. And it's been sort of quiet, but I think 3D printing is going to make a big comeback, and I think it's going to be pretty big. And I think this period right now we'll look back on as like, oh wow, how did that happen? Let's not try that again. This whole complete and total monopolization, this technocratic globalist system. And automatic control is returning. So it fits in nicely with the oscillation in Quigley's model. We seem to keep going back between automatic conscious, seems to be like returning to a more automatic, decentralized model. And then what I didn't mention here, what I also wanted to bring up is what a recent podcast that we have, that's not live yet, but it's going to be soon, where we discuss military technology. Actually, on YouTube, you can see our live recording already on that. Military technology is becoming decentralized. Guess what? It has been for a while already. I would say, the first shots were fired, literally and figuratively, when people were able to take down Black Hawk helicopters with handheld surface-to-air rocket launchers. It's because a Black Hawk helicopter costs 20 million, a billion. I don't know how much these things cost at this point, but the rocket launcher costs maybe a couple of $1,000. And so, but that was a while ago already. Now we have a even more decentralized warfare. We're seeing, for example, in the Ukraine conflict, drones are being deployed that can go very far, and that can be run by some dude with a backpack in the woods or in the tundra or wherever. Mm-hmm. And they're running drone jet skis into big ships, and so warfare.
Yeah, so $20,000 drone jet ski could sink $200 million battleship. Right.
Yeah. So warfare is definitely becoming more decentralized. And when we talk about warfare, just now I've only covered military technology, and it's kind of important to point out that warfare has changed quite substantially. It is no longer weaponry that is sort of paramount, but misinformation, propaganda, mind screwery. It has become a much more crucial component of warfare. There's official theory by military theoreticians about this. They call this fifth generation warfare. If we actually, I'm going to pull up the Wikipedia on fifth generation warfare. I'm going to
go ahead and de-share me, John.
Okay, I shall. Yes. And while we're doing this boogie woogie here, switching the screen shares, and before we move to fifth generation warfare, just to plug it into Quigley, he brings up in Tragedy and Hope the shift between the night. Talk about the shift towards democratization, shall we say? The shift between the night. And then how that is neutralized with your crossbow and your musket eventually.
Exactly.
And then also shifting in the opposite direction, in Tragedy and Hope, he brings up the Brown Bess musket, the famous American musket, the British musket that was so democratic, and how that eventually gives way by the mid-19th century to artillery, and the kind of the monopolization goes back into the hands of the state with these giant weapons. Here we go. I'm going to get this up on the screen. So yeah, I just wanted to insert that before we get to fifth
good
generation.
Point. Because Quigley also points out in his book, the more decentralized the ownership of arms is within society, the more of a chance you have for some sort of democratic society emerging. Without it, you have no chance, basically. So yeah.
Page 34 on Tragedy and Hope. 2 paragraphs. He lays it out right there.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So then we have fifth generation warfare. Is warfare that is conducted primarily through non-kinetic military action, such as social engineering, misinformation, cyber attacks, along with emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and fully autonomous systems. Fifth generation warfare has been described by Daniel Abbott as a war of information and perception. So this goes along nicely with my suggestion of data capitalism, right? These are all data things, like cyber attacks, misinformation, getting data into people's heads and out of people's heads. These are all symptoms of an obsession with data collection, control, and dissemination. And the only reason why I brought up fifth generational warfare is because of this topic of AI, which is huge, and it is a big buzz right now. But generative AI really seems to be a huge deal. And what we're seeing along the lines of fifth generation warfare, we're seeing AI monopolized among 3, maybe 4 mega corporations right now. We have OpenAI, which is Microsoft. We have Bard, which is Google. We have Amazon, I guess, which is Redshift, and I don't even know. Maybe if you, but
who's Chat GPT or whatever it is?
Well, that's Microsoft now. Okay. Microsoft, I think, owns a large share at least. But yeah, OpenAI is the company. I think that Microsoft owns a majority share of that now. So that's what's happening, right? We have, once again, data monopoly capitalism symptoms. We have this data attempted to be monopolized among a few technocratic mega corporations that are friendly with the globalist regime. But what are we seeing also? We're seeing decentralized AI merging with cryptocurrency to absolutely kick these people's asses in the long term. I think it's inevitable and irresistible. Dylan and I recently had David A. Johnston, one of the inventor of decentralized autonomous applications. Ethereum was largely inspired by his white paper, and he is currently working on an AI layer called Morpheus.ai. And I'm just gonna share that one real quick. And I'd
like to put some more framework in leading up to this AI conversation that we're about to jump into. Is that not only are these companies taking over this monopoly on AI, is the AI is coming in to replace government. The goal is to bring in this AI to replace government. We're already seeing it in countries like Hong Kong. There's an AI who's a voting board member of a company in Hong Kong. In Brazil, there's an AI CEO. A municipality in Brazil was also the first legal entity anywhere on earth that had an AI draft legislation. And I did the show making fun of Stephen Colbert. He had the WF mad scientist Yuval Noah Harari on, talking about, Colbert's on there going, I'm ready for the machines to tell us what to do because they're unbiased and made by people with vision and hope, right? There's this idea that the AI is human beings are biased, human beings are selfish, but the AI is unbiased because it can objectively look at facts and information. And then, we're looking at what Google's AI spits out. We're like, okay, show me some American founding fathers. Oh, George Washington was black. Oh, that's interesting, right? I mean, the AI is just like so obviously, ridiculously, stupidly biased. I mean, it makes your eyes cross. And this idea that AI is anything other than some software that spits out what its programmers tell it to spit out is asinine. It's not sentient. It's not objective. It does what its programmers tell it to do. And then when we see the institutionalization of this, apparently an executive order just got passed a few months ago that essentially something to do with controlling AI. And David Johnson's opinion was this is basically regulatory capture by the big companies to make sure that they don't have any competition. And, it's in question whether or not it survives the courts or that sort of thing. But regardless of whether or not it survives the courts, this is the push toward, okay, we want the AI to come in where the big corporations can now start taking over the government by replacing the government with AI. And they're unbiased, but they're obviously biased by whoever's, typing it in. And we see the current government trying to set up a structure where no one can compete. And then in comes Morpheus.
Yeah.
Right? Wow. But take it away. Yeah.
Morpheus is basically a decentralized network where you and I, we can all run a node on our network. And if we ask it to do something, it'll confirm with us, oh, is this what you want? Is that what you want? And you sign whatever decision you let it pursue with your private key in your Web3 wallet. So this is an AI system that tentatively and carefully learns from every single individual using this system. It's not a stupid black box put in front of our stupid faces, and then we're told, now here it is. It has all the answers, and whatever it says is true. Because this is where they're going to try to take this to where at one point they're going to try to legislatively enforce authoritative AI. The AI that thinks the founding fathers were African Americans and who can't tell us a clear distinction between a man and a woman, coincidentally.
They're the authority. They make the
coincidentally,
rules. Yeah.
all the idiot talking points from the technocrats and the far left are expressed by this AI. It's quite amazing.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. It's artificial stupidity, actually, I would say. But so this new AI is decentralized. It runs on your node, on my node, on this node. It learns every step of the way carefully as to what should be the next steps and what should we do. And any action it takes, you sign with your private key and ask for your authorization. It's not an AI that will be used to dominate you. It's an AI that will help you become more successful, more efficient in your life. And it's an AI that it will absolutely inevitably make these activist-run centralized AI systems hilarious and ridiculous. And people will go, well, okay, then why don't I just install Morpheus for free? It's open source. I can install it, start running it. You can use cryptocurrency if you want to invest in it. It's actually, by the way, open, fair launch right now. You can stake Ether and earn.
Me and Nima already did.
Yeah, we did that.
Very cool.
You can earn Morpheus tokens as long as you're staking. I mean, if you have Ether, you might as well stake it on there because you can withdraw your Ether after 7-day minimum period whenever you want. And you're fueling the future. You're fueling the two biggest growth currents that we have going on right now, AI and cryptocurrency merging together to make something absolutely amazing for the future.
And then I think I don't know if it's the most important, but a very key component of Morpheus is the fact that there is no organization.
There's no founder.
There's no founder. There's no organization. This is designed off of decentralized principles. And I mean, you can look at the website and see the white paper of how people get paid by participating into it. Because essentially what we're doing by staking our Ether, that's what's funding Morpheus. And then we get rewarded by that stake with Morpheus tokens and fund it at the same time. And everything is done cryptographically. Everything's done anonymously. Everything's done in a decentralized way where the White House can pass whatever executive order it wants, trying to do regulatory capture over AI. There's no one to arrest.
Yeah,
There's
Morpheus,
no one to shoot.
they can do their executive orders where you need a driver's license to do coding, and you need to do present a license to run an AI data center. Morpheus is just going to be sitting there saying, well, cool story, bro. I'm on everyone's computer around the world.
Yeah,
good luck with that.
Talk about circumvention. Like, is that or is that not the exact example of circumvention that we just talked about in this discussion?
Exactly. Yes.
Great. You won the War of Swords. We just invented muskets. It's a perfect corollary of that. Of you could do whatever you want in the system that you just created. We just stepped outside of it.
I was talking to a friend of mine about AI investments, and I suggested Morpheus to him, and he asked, "Oh, cool. What company can I invest in?" And then I was like, "There's not. It's completely decentralized." So then he was disappointed. But you can still earn a profit. You have to do it with cryptocurrency. That's all. But you can you can stake your ETH. You can earn the token. You can buy the more token when it starts trading, even if you don't want to do the staking and all that stuff. That's the thing. You've decoupled value from identity. There's no identity. There's no company. The author of the white paper is anonymous. The source code is open. It doesn't matter who's behind it because everyone can audit it. It's basically what Bitcoin was for currency. That's what Morpheus is going to be for AI, and similar models. There's Llama also, which Morpheus utilizes Llama for a part of its computations. So this is a whole trend. I'm just giving you one example here, but just along the lines of this whole cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer decentralization, it's inevitable that there's going to be open source solutions. And David Johnson made a great. I love this this argument that he makes. Today, 95% of all servers run on Linux, not on Windows. They run on Linux, which is open source. Browsers. I mean, that's what's going to happen with everything. Open source is inevitable, right? It's so powerful and it's so undefeatable that it's irresistible, and it's going to be inevitable, I think.
I have a question here in our last stretch of maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and it doesn't need to monopolize all that time, but we have this dying system that's doing what every other dying system has tried to do before, which is to staunch its opposition and prop up its dead system. Looking at the world now, you see the BRICS to challenge the globalists. Not that it's the bee's knees, but there's challenge there. You have this Morpheus stuff. You have the crypto. You have new schools rising to replace the old ones, and you have this fight to the knife between the old system and the new system. You have this nonsense in Ukraine and so forth. It seems, here's the question, and I'd like to hear what you guys think in this context of Quigley and systems coming and going. It seems the archons, the powers that be, the globalists, have bet on chaos. There's an element of chaos that they're trying, it would seem to me, whether that's the very coordinated migrations into Europe and North America, with all sorts in very large numbers, unbelievably large numbers, whether that's the recklessness in Ukraine with French troops now going in and the constant escalation there, whether it's the insanity culturally with the fentanyl and with the gender nonsense and all sorts of things. There seems to be an element of chaos, and I wonder if you can give me your thoughts on that matter. Do you palpitate a similar dynamic there on the parts of the globalists, and how might you or how might Quigley respond to such a thing if it indeed exists?
I mean, forgetting Quigley for a second, I think now, I mean, we've kind of laid a groundwork for analysis. We can talk about analysis until we're blue in the face, but I think we put up enough to have a conversation about action. At this point, it's very easy for a conversation like this to be like, well, let's sit here and conceptualize how this may play out. You ever heard anybody refer to that? How might this play out? How might this play out? When somebody says that, they are throwing their free will in the garbage. Mm-hmm. And they're encouraging you to throw your free will in the garbage. This doesn't play out. We're not, materialistic atoms bouncing around, just playing out some sort of, pre-descriptive physics. Mm-hmm. We are individuals with free will, and whether or not this goes in one direction or another is a matter of the choices you and I make. So now, what me and Nima, what we're trying to do, we say, okay, here's the problem. Here's the conflict. Here's the global crazy people who, not only is it conflict, these crazy motherfuckers are reading books like this, knowing what's going on, knowing that civilizations end when they have invasion. I think they know this, and this is why that they're bringing in all these people, is they're trying to expedite the 7 stages of civilization because they know about it, right?
They don't want it to go through that cycle that we've seen in Western Civ.
Well,
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, they want total control. They want to create the chaos because from the chaos, they could bring in their own system.
The universal empire. They want the universal empire.
They want the universal empire. Now,
so they're trying to override that system that we've seen in Western Civ, where it kind of alternates between 3 and 4. Okay.
Yes.
That's our hypothesis.
Because universal, because universal empire is the 5th stage in that progression, correct?
I see.
Right.
Or 6th, I guess. No, 5th.
No, it's
then
5.
decay,
then decay, then invasion. So now, On the flip side, what me and Nima described is said, here's a circumvention idea that completely steps us away from these things. And you can say, well, how's it going to play out, the old institution versus the new circumvention? It's going to play out depending on how you and I act.
Got it. If
you and I are black-pilled, if you and I go, well, even if we're not black-pilled, we're just like, well, these two things are interesting, let's just sit back and see what happens. You're a passive or a negative player. Passive at best.
So yeah.
Right?
So to answer your question, John, they absolutely want to bring about chaos. There's like evidence everywhere for this, right? For the fact that they don't really seem to care all that much to have structured control over things, but they're literally willing to inject 7 billion people with a deadly gene drug and like go oops. So they are so careless. They want they highlight the most offensive news stories all the time to get people riled up. So chaos is what they want, and chaos is an old model, right? Problem, reaction, solution is, I don't know how old this model is, but I think it is something
thousands and thousands of years old.
That is in the genes of these kinds of oligarchies. They know that if we bring about chaos, they're not going to fight us. We're going to present the solution stuff. That's what they have in mind, and they hope that we descend into chaos. But what they don't have in mind is the power of open source, the power of decentralization, the power of the individual.
The power of us not reacting to our reactions. Basically, like for us to think, in future timelines ahead, like they do. Yeah.
Like the school point you brought up earlier about Gates and all this stuff, online schools that we brought up at the beginning of our talk as an example.
Yeah. Well,
not taking the bait.
Well, and I think it's worth, if we got enough time to talk about this, talking about decentralization of politics. I've brought up before the Center for Self-Governance. Everybody has to check this out. Everybody has to get involved with the Center for Self-Governance because they have cracked the Team Illuminati Overlord code on how to influence policymakers and how to influence lawmakers. For example, we talked about how the goal here is to get AI to come in and replace local government. How do you slow that down? How do you stop it? Obviously, we talked about the circumvention happening with the new decentralized AI technology, but at the same time, one of the key components that's needed for the AI takeover to happen is to give AI human rights, get it enshrined in law that AI has personhood rights. Yeah. The Center for Self-Governance teams are actively, I think right now we've got the states of Idaho, North Dakota, and Utah have passed into law that AI does not have human rights according to state law. This was done entirely by people trained by the Center for Self-Governance. In Utah in particular, it was done by one woman with a full-time job and 3 kids as a hobby. This is how potent this stuff is. So the Center for Self-Governance teaches independent, decentralized teams how to become influential over the policy making. And once you understand the long-term goal of how they're going to start adjusting the policies 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now might be too far, and start adjusting the policies in such a way now where parents are the primary stakeholders of their children's upbringing, not the state. AI does not have personhood rights. Only humans do, right? Getting this enshrined now is going to really slow down and hamper their efforts of what's coming down in the future. And if we can merge these techniques of how to influence policymakers, for example, what if we had enough teams working on the state level, working at the federal level to say, hey, yeah, we do want AI to have such and such rights or whatever inside the government, but it's got to be decentralized. And so that shifts. The AI revolution is coming, but can we legally already get ahead of the game and shift it to things like Morpheus and away from stuff like Bard? Right?
Yeah.
And the Center for Self-Governance teams, again, is decentralizing this political power. And it's so effective, and coupled with these other ideas that we're talking about, like the free will choice that we have to actually get engaged and do action to help this along is so potent. If just a fraction of a percentage of the population got involved with it, we would be in just a completely different world. I don't know, overnight, but it would feel like overnight.
Yeah, the only rub is getting people to get that fire in the belly and to act. That's one of the things we're really handicapped with, and by deliberate fostering is our love of ease, our love of being served, our formation as consumers, which is been given to us to be our fundamental reality. We have to kill that in ourselves.
Well, also, why I like cryptocurrency so much is because it addresses this degenerate element in all of us.
Yes, that's the word.
You need to have a profit motive to get people to do something. Without it, you can theorize and talk all day long, and few people can get together and do nonprofit stuff. Yes, but look at how cryptocurrency is blowing up because people are into making a profit. I'm not saying that's great, but it is a component of the instrument of expansion.
Correct.
Always been, and it always probably will be. So that's why it's so powerful, so irresistible, so inevitable.
And then maybe to finish this off, going back to the cryptocurrency, I think we're really going to see a tipping point. This is my hypothesis, in that what crypto's figuring out right now, and Nima was alluding to this, is how to start funding projects. And there's a project happening right now where essentially money was pooled. Bitcoin and various other tokens were pooled in order for a group of people to buy the equipment to mine more Bitcoin. And then the people who pooled the money get paid in part of the proceeds that are earned by the Bitcoin mining that was done from the equipment that was purchased. This is, I think, kind of a first step to show the digital realm coming down to the analog realm. Right now, I mean, they're still buying analog stuff in order to earn more Bitcoin, but something analog really happened. It's not just up in the ethereal digital sphere anymore. I think as more and more projects are done to get this Bitcoin, not just Bitcoin, cryptocurrency funding analog projects, what is the instrument of expansion? It's savings. Surplus, savings, investment into invention. Well, I mean, what's the market cap for crypto right now, Nemo? Is it $2 trillion, something like that?
Yeah, it's 2 or 3 trillion almost, I think.
Let's call it 3 trillion. If there's $3 trillion worth of money flowing around in the cryptosphere, and people now are figuring out how to take that money and funnel it toward analog, by analog I mean like stuff happening in the real world, projects. There's your new instrument of expansion right there.
That's what's happening. Exactly. These large numbers are very important because it's no longer a sideshow. This is becoming a savings pool that will have economic power over the coming years and decades. And that's very important because the people with all the economic power, they always end up calling the shots. That's why we have all these giant NGOs, billionaire funded wealth management, money managers, giant hedge fund managers, Fortune 100. That's why they have so much power, because they control all the money. Well, there's a new pool of savings growing and growing and growing in the realm of crypto. And savings is an important component of an instrument of expansion. So this is where the future instrument of expansion is emerging, and the components are growing. And yeah, like Dylan said, the project that he was referring to, Mineral, is funded through cryptocurrency to buy real world assets and generate a profit and pay the shareholders through the blockchain every day their reward for funding the project. This is, again, so inevitable.
It's now.
So irresistible. This is the future of funding projects.
And it seems we're very much in this topic, very much in that kind of fermentation stage that we've looked at in those gestation. Yes. And in either instance, either similarly, you have, it seems nothing is happening. It seems the old baby boomer, that is just going to continue in secula seculorum. But when the change comes, perhaps like Lenin said, more will happen in a week than happens in a decade, or whatever the statement. I mean, when the change comes, when it happens, it's going to happen fast, because all that fermentation, all that gestation has been going on the whole time.
It's going to happen very fast, yes. People won't even know what hit them when the time has come.
Yep. I agree.
Well, the ones who didn't watch this series
Right.
won't.
Right. The losers. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
But I know. Yes, sir.
We got to jump. So you want to wrap
I was
this up?
going to say that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So just tell us what we have looking forward to. Arita TV. I know you mentioned them with military discussion, and then anything else you guys want to say?
No, just if you want more conversations like this, hop on over to ireta.tv.
Great. And then for the audience on my part, please do consider enrolling in Apocatastasis. And we have plenty of related courses, including a whole semester long on historiography, where we look a lot at Toynbee of all people and all the old dudes as well before him. So we have a whole course on that and all sorts of other classes as well. And then please do check out Apocatastasis Press for our various reprints and original compositions and so forth. And no doubt we will see Dylan and Nima down the line. So to the audience, thank you for your attention. And certainly, gentlemen, thank you for your insights in this series.
Thank you, John.
Thanks again for having us on.